In 1870, the oil industry was chaos. Hundreds of companies, thousands of drillers, no rules, no order, no single master. By 1880, one man controlled 90% of it. Not through invention, not through discovery, through something far more dangerous. Strategy, patience, and an absolute willingness to destroy anyone in his way. $280 billion, 3 times the wealth of Jeff Bezos, 1.5% of the entire U.S. economy. One man. The United States government had to write new laws, laws that had never existed before in American history, specifically to stop him. One journalist compared him to an octopus, tentacles gripping oil, steel, copper, shipping, state houses, the highest offices of government. His name was John D. Rockefeller. And this is the story of how an ordinary boy from rural New York built the most complete monopoly in the history of American capitalism, and what it actually cost. The industry, the country, and himself. Richford, New York. 1839. John Davison Rockefeller was born into a life that offered almost no hint of what was coming. His father, William Avery Rockefeller, was a man of many identities, none of them admirable. A con artist, a self-styled quack doctor who sold homemade remedies out of a traveling cart, a man rumored to be involved in horse theft, a man who dressed impeccably, because if you looked wealthy enough, people stopped asking difficult questions. This was the first financial lesson John Rockefeller ever learned. Perception is power. The family moved constantly, following William's schemes across upstate New York, until 1857, when they settled in Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland would prove to be one of the most consequential relocations in American economic history. Close to Pennsylvania's oil fields, rich in rail connections, a city on the edge of an industrial explosion. But nobody knew that yet. Young John was unremarkable by every measure. He attended school irregularly. He chopped wood, tended horses, raised chickens on the family farm. He was quiet, reserved, the kind of boy people forgot the moment he left the room. The only thing anyone noticed was that he never wasted a penny. He dropped out of high school to take a job as an assistant bookkeeper, 50 cents a day. He saved every coin. He asked his father for a loan. And in 1859, at the age of 19, he launched his first business, a commodity brokerage firm trading produce and petroleum products. It was not spectacular. It was not visionary. It was simply the first step on a very long, very calculated climb. By 1863, Rockefeller and his partners had accumulated enough capital to open their own refinery. And here, at this precise moment, the story diverges from every other rags to riches tale. Most men in his position would have celebrated. Rockefeller started calculating. He made an early crucial observation that most of his rivals missed entirely. Oil exploration and drilling were volatile. Prices swung wildly with every new discovery. But refining, turning crude oil into usable product, had stable, predictable costs. Control the refineries, control the margin, control the industry. In 1870, at the age of 31, he incorporated the company. Standard Oil. The name itself was a statement of intent. Standard. One quality. One price. One owner. His methods inside Standard Oil were obsessive in their precision. He knew to the fraction of a cent what it cost to produce every barrel. He eliminated every drop of waste, literally collecting the byproducts of oil, refining that competitors threw away, and selling them as separate products. He invested in research teams to solve problems others considered impossible. When Ohio oil fields produced crude so impure it was considered worthless, Rockefeller's chemists devised a method to strip the impurities out. What others called garbage, he turned into profit. But efficiency alone never built an empire. Rockefeller needed scale, and scale required eliminating the competition, not by outperforming them, but by making it structurally impossible for them to survive. He approached the railroads. Standard Oil guaranteed 60 full carloads of oil every single day, a volume no competitor could match. In exchange, the railroads gave Standard Oil secret discounts that slashed his transportation costs to a fraction of what rivals paid. His competitors were paying full price to ship oil. He was paying almost nothing. The game was rigged before it began. Then came the Cleveland Massacre. In just the first 3 months of 1872, Rockefeller bought out, shut down, or bankrupted 22 of his 26 Cleveland rivals. In 90 days, he offered what he called fair market prices. Fair market prices for companies he had already driven to the edge of bankruptcy through his secret railroad deals. Sell to me at my price, or watch me destroy you completely. Most sold. By the late 1880s, Standard Oil controlled 90% of American refineries, 90% of American pipelines. One man, one company, one country's entire energy supply. The American public had a name for Standard Oil: the Octopus. And it was not wrong. Rockefeller's reach extended far beyond oil, steel, copper, shipping, state legislatures. Politicians across multiple states received Standard Oil's quiet support and returned the favor with favorable legislation, blind eyes, and selective enforcement. Rockefeller himself had a strict policy: never speak to the press. No interviews, no statements, no public appearances. He believed silence was strength. He was wrong about this one. His silence made journalists more determined. In 1904, a journalist named Ida Tarbell published a meticulous 2-year investigation into Standard Oil's tactics, the secret railroad deals, the predatory pricing, the methodical destruction of competitors. All of it documented, published, read by millions. The public was furious. Politicians facing re-election were terrified. And in 1911, the United States Supreme Court delivered its verdict. Standard Oil had violated the Sherman Antitrust Act. The most powerful private company in American history was ordered to break apart. 34 separate companies, dissolved by order of the Supreme Court. The government had written new laws specifically to stop him. And eventually, those laws worked. But here is the twist that history almost never mentions. The breakup made Rockefeller even richer. He owned shares in all 34 successor companies. As those companies competed freely for the first time, their individual values soared. Rockefeller, sitting in retirement, watched his net worth multiply. The man the government tried to destroy became wealthier because of the attempt. But the breakup was not the heaviest price Rockefeller paid. Journalist Ida Tarbell, who had spent years dismantling his reputation, described what she saw when she finally looked at him closely. She called him one of the saddest objects in the world. His alopecia had left him entirely hairless, his skin pale and drawn. He looked, she wrote, like a man whose body had been slowly hollowed out from the inside. He was 56 years old, and he looked like a man who had lived twice that. The relentless pressure of running a global empire, the lawsuits, the investigations, the public hatred, the paranoia of constant scrutiny, had physically consumed him. And something shifted. Whether from guilt, from faith, from the simple recognition that he could not take it with him, Rockefeller began to give it away. Not quietly, not symbolically, systematically, at a scale that had never been attempted. In 1913, Rockefeller established the Rockefeller Foundation. He endowed it with a substantial portion of his fortune and set its focus on 3 areas: public health, education, scientific research. His financial support helped establish the University of Chicago. He funded the Rockefeller Institute of Medical Research, which pioneered vaccines for meningitis and yellow fever. He established public health schools at Johns Hopkins and Harvard. He launched global campaigns targeting hookworm, malaria, yellow fever, and typhus, diseases that were quietly devastating the world's poorest populations. And then came the Green Revolution. The Rockefeller Foundation became the primary funder of agricultural research programs that developed high-yield crop varieties across Asia, Latin America, and Africa. Programs credited by serious historians and economists with saving up to 1 billion lives. 1 billion lives. From the fortune built on destroying competitors. For many years, the Rockefeller Foundation distributed more foreign aid than the entire United States government. His fortune at its peak was nearly $900 million in 1912. At his death, the estate held just $26 million. He had given almost all of it away. But here is the questions these history demands we ask. Was it genuine? Was it guilt? Was it strategy? Tax advantages? Political influence? The rehabilitation of a legacy that had become synonymous with greed and manipulation. The Rockefeller Foundation was used to counter communism in post-war France, to shape foreign policy through educational funding, to place foundation employees inside international organizations, gaining privileged access to scientific, business, and political elites. Philanthropy or power exercised through generosity? The honest answer is probably both. And the honest answer is what makes Rockefeller genuinely fascinating and genuinely disturbing. Most family fortunes dissolve within 3 generations. The statistics are brutal. On average, only about 10% of a family's wealth survives to the grandchildren. The Rockefellers wrote their own rules around that statistic. They pioneered what is known as the family office, a private full-service organization dedicated entirely to managing the wealth, investments, and business interests of a single family. They built irrevocable trusts, legal structures so robust they protect assets from taxes, lawsuits, and creditors across multiple generations. They employed what is known as the waterfall concept, a wealth transfer strategy using permanent tax-exempt life insurance policies to pass wealth between generations, while indefinitely postponing tax liability. The government could break up Standard Oil. It could not break up the legal architecture the Rockefellers built around their money. Today, the Rockefeller family holds a combined net worth of $10.3 billion. That number almost certainly understates the reality. Trusts, foundations, and private investment vehicles rarely appear in Forbes rankings. Their political influence has been equally durable. From 1950 to 2014, for 64 consecutive years, a Rockefeller held high political office in the United States. Senators, governors, vice presidents. Several prominent politicians married into the family. And the oil companies? Standard Oil was broken into 34 pieces in 1911. Those pieces became ExxonMobil, Chevron, BP, ConocoPhillips. The companies that powered the entire 20th century. All of them, Standard Oil's children. It was only in 2016 that the family finally divested from fossil fuels entirely, citing ethical concerns. A century and a half after the first refinery, the Rockefellers walked away from oil, on their own terms, in their own time. Step back. Look at the full arc. A boy nobody noticed, quietly counting his pennies on an Ohio farm. A young businessman who chose refining over drilling, and chose domination over competition. A monopolist who crushed 22 rivals in 90 days and bribed his way into 90% of an entire industry. A man so powerful the US government rewrote its laws to stop him, and still couldn't stop him from getting richer. And then, a philanthropist who gave away more money than most governments, funded vaccines that saved millions, and built institutions that outlasted everything else he ever touched. John D. Rockefeller is not a simple story. He is not a villain. He is not a hero. He is the most complete portrait of American capitalism that history has ever produced. The system rewarded his ruthlessness and then punished it. His money destroyed competitors and then saved 1 billion lives. His name was synonymous with greed and is now on universities, hospitals, and research institutes across the world. Legal, but not always ethical. Generous, but not always selfless. Powerful, right up until the very last breath. The question Rockefeller's life demands we answer is not whether he was good or evil. The question is, when does ambition become something the world cannot afford? And who gets to decide? If you made it to the very end, you now understand why the Rockefeller story is not just history. It is a blueprint, still being used, right now. Drop it in the comments. That is how I know you stayed until the last frame. And if this changed how you think about wealth, power, and legacy, subscribe. Because every week on this channel, we follow the money through history. And it always leads somewhere that surprises you. Next, Another empire, another era, another name the textbooks underestimated. Do not miss it.